The enlightened one in his first days after awakening. Imagine a serene atmosphere filled with the soft glow of dawn as the young enlightened one sits in deep contemplation beneath the Bodhi tree, having attained the ultimate truth. For the first 7 days, he immersed himself in the bliss of liberation, a profound joy and serenity that only those who have touched enlightenment can truly understand. These days were not merely moments of stillness. They were a time of profound reflection as the Buddha faced his own heart and mind, rejoicing in having discovered the truth, yet also feeling a deep connection to the sacred Bodhi tree that had witnessed his extraordinary transformation. But the story didn't end under the Bodhi tree. The Buddha wandered to other trees around Uruvela. Beneath the Ajapala banyan tree, he encountered a Brahmin who asked him about the true essence of religion. The Buddha explained that true religion does not lie in rituals, but in a life of pure ethics and profound wisdom. Time flowed on. During the 3rd week, as he meditated under the Mukalinda tree, a great storm arose. A cobra coiled around him, spreading its hood to shield him from the rain and wind. This miraculous image symbolizes more than a legend. It represents the harmony between humanity and nature when enlightenment radiates through the world. Later, under the Rajayatana tree, 2 merchants, Tapusa and Balika, offered barley gruel and honey, the first alms presented to the Buddha. These 2 men became the first to take refuge in the Triple Gem, laying the foundation for a Buddhist community, long before his teachings were widely proclaimed. During the 5th week, beneath the Ajapala banyan tree, once again, the Buddha faced a critical decision: to keep the truth to himself or to share it with the world. This deliberation is recorded as a dialogue with the deity Brahma Sahampati. The Buddha pondered, "The Dharma I have realized is profound and difficult to understand. Will people be able to grasp it?" But Brahma implored him, "Please, Lord, teach the Dharma. There are those with little dust in their eyes who will understand and attain liberation." Moved by compassion, the Buddha declared, "The gates to the deathless are open for those who listen." With that, he resolved to begin his mission of spreading the truth. He set out for the deer park, where 5 ascetics awaited him, ready to embark on a new journey, a journey that would illumine the world with the light of enlightenment. The Buddha's first sermon and the birth of the Sangha. On a quiet morning at Deer Park in Isipatana, 5 ascetic monks, Kondana, Bhadia, Vapa, Mahanama, and Asji, were filled with discontent. They saw their former companion, the ascetic Gotama, approaching. This was the same man who had abandoned their path of extreme austerity, and now he was returning. Resentful, they decided not to greet him, not to rise, and not to pay him homage. Yet all of that changed in an instant. As the Buddha drew closer, the radiance of liberation emanating from him dispelled their doubts. The serene nobility and profound peace visible on his face were undeniable. Unable to resist, they respectfully welcomed him, taking his alms bowl, preparing a seat, and washing his feet. However, when they addressed him as friend in the familiar way of old, the Buddha smiled gently and corrected them. Monks, do not address the Tathagata as friend. The Tathagata is an arahant, a fully enlightened one. This declaration was more than a change in words, it was a statement of truth. The Buddha, had transcended the cycle of birth and death and had become fully awakened. Still, the 5 monks were skeptical. They asked, "How can someone who abandoned austerity and lived a life of comfort attain the truth?" The Buddha, calm and composed, began his first teaching, the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta, or the Sermon on the Turning of the Wheel of Dharma. He spoke of the middle way, a path that avoids the extremes of indulgence in sensual pleasures and harsh self-mortification. This is the path that leads to wisdom, tranquility, and liberation. He then explained the 4 noble truths. 1. Dukkha. Life is full of suffering, birth, aging, sickness, death, separation, disappointment, and more. 2. Samudaya, origin of suffering. The root of suffering is craving, the desire that leads to rebirth and clinging. 3. Nirodhan said suffering ends when craving is completely extinguished. 4. Magga, the path to the cessation of suffering, the Noble Eightfold Path, consisting of right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. His words rang like a bell, awakening their understanding. Khandana, the eldest of the group, suddenly realized the truth. All that is subject to arising is subject to cessation. He knelt before the Buddha, asking to be his disciple. Thus, Khandana became the first monk in Buddhist history, marking the beginning of the Sangha. A few days later, the remaining 4 monks also fully grasped the teachings and attained the state of arahantship. During this time, the Buddha delivered another profound teaching, the Anattalakkhana Sutta, on the nature of non-self. This revolutionary idea shattered traditional Indian beliefs, proclaiming that there is no eternal, unchanging soul. Everything is impermanent and without self. As the discourse ended, all 5 monks achieved complete liberation. This moment marked the formal establishment of the Sangha, a community of enlightened beings dedicated to spreading the light of the Dharma across the world. The growth of the Sangha and the story of Yasa. In the serene quiet of Deer Park, the Buddha continued his mission of teaching. Not far away was the bustling city of Benares, vibrant yet full of challenges. The Buddha rarely ventured there, not only because of the distance, but also because of the resistance from the townspeople, who were often skeptical and unkind toward mendicants. Yet, it was from Benares itself that a unique encounter would lead to a pivotal development in the Buddha's growing community. Yasa, the son of a wealthy and influential merchant, found himself disillusioned with his privileged life. Surrounded by excess, he felt an overwhelming emptiness. Early one morning, driven by a restless heart, Yasa left his home. The golden sandals on his feet carried him step by step to Deer Park. There, in the tranquil presence of the Buddha, Yasa felt a newfound clarity, as though his troubled heart had been illuminated. Seeing into Yasa's heart and recognizing his yearning to transcend worldly attachments, the Buddha began to teach. He delivered the gradual discourse, a methodical and compassionate way of instruction. Starting with simple concepts like generosity, morality, and the joys of the heavenly realms, the Buddha gently led Yasa toward deeper truths. The 4 noble truths of suffering, its origin, its cessation, and the path leading to its end. The teachings shattered Yasa's ignorance like sunlight dispelling darkness. In that moment, Yasa realized the truth. All that arises is subject to cessation. Meanwhile, Yasa's father, deeply worried about his son's disappearance, searched for him tirelessly. His search eventually brought him to Deer Park, where he encountered the Buddha. Hearing the same teachings, Yasa's father, though still preoccupied with concern for his son, felt the power of the Dharma. He took refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, becoming the first lay follower to formally accept the Triple Gem. When father and son were reunited, Yasa's father pleaded with him to return home. But Yasa, gazing at the Buddha with unwavering devotion, remained silent. The Buddha spoke, "Out, who has renounced the world and turned away from sensual pleasures, cannot return to the life he left behind." Accepting this, Yasa's father invited the Buddha and Yasa to their home for a meal. The following morning, the Buddha and Yasa visited the family. Yasa's mother and wife greeted them with great respect. After listening to the Buddha's gradual discourse, both women were deeply moved and became the first female lay disciples in the Sangha. News of Yasa's ordination quickly spread throughout Benares, capturing the attention of many. Soon, 4 of Yasa's closest friends, Vimala, Subbahu, Punaji, and Gavampati, approached the Buddha, requesting ordination. Each of them attained arahantship, fully enlightened. The Sangha grew rapidly, with 50 more young men from the surrounding regions joining, bringing the total number of arahants to 61. Through Yasa's awakening, the Buddhist community began to flourish, spreading the light of liberation far and wide, planting the seeds of enlightenment in countless hearts. The Buddha converts King Bimbisāra. After his enlightenment, the Buddha realized a crucial truth. The attitudes of rulers could greatly influence the growth of the Dharma. With foresight and purpose, he decided to travel to Rajagaha, modern-day Rajgir, the capital of Magadha, to meet King Bimbisāra, a young and progressive ruler. At the time, Rajagaha was a powerful center nestled in a Z-shaped valley surrounded by mountains. Rich in natural resources and fortified by its geography, the city thrived as a hub of economic and political power under King Bimbisāra's rule. But for the Buddha, Rajagaha was more than a mighty capital. It was a fertile ground to plant the seeds of enlightenment. When the Buddha and his disciples, including the 3 Kassapa brothers and their former followers, arrived at Lativana, southwest of the city, word quickly reached King Bimbisāra. The king, who had met the Buddha years before when he was still a young prince, eagerly set out with his entourage to meet him. The Buddha understood the significance of this encounter. He orchestrated a dialogue with Uruvela Kassapa, a highly respected ascetic with matted hair, whose reputation lent credibility to the gathering. Through their questions and responses, the Buddha captivated the audience, including King Bimbisāra. The Buddha asked Kassapa, "Kassapa, why did you abandon the fire rituals you once practiced?" Kassapa replied, "I gave them up because I realized they only led to sensual pleasures and were impure. Now I have found peace in nirvana." At the conclusion of the exchange, Kassapa knelt before the Buddha and declared, "Lord, you are my teacher. I am now your disciple." Kassapa's public declaration of devotion as a revered figure in the ascetic community created a profound impact. Seizing the moment, the Buddha delivered the gradual discourse to the assembly. His words deeply moved King Bimbisāra, who then formally took refuge in the Triple Gem, the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. The king expressed his heartfelt reverence. "Lord, since I was a prince, I have longed to meet a fully enlightened one, to hear the Dharma, and to take refuge at his feet. Today, all my wishes have come true." King Bimbisāra invited the Buddha and his disciples to the royal palace for a meal the following day. But his generosity did not stop there. During the ceremony, the king announced the donation of the Valuvana, bamboo grove, to the Buddha and the Sangha as their monastery. The grove, located close enough to the capital for engagement with the people yet serene enough for monastic life, was an invaluable gift. The conversion of King Bimbisāra was not only symbolic but also transformative. Thousands of citizens followed the king's example, taking refuge in the Triple Gem. The Buddhist philosophy of the Middle Way, with its message of harmony and practicality, resonated with people across all social strata, from nobles and merchants to the working class. Through King Bimbisāra's patronage, Buddhism gained not only recognition, but also a platform for dialogue and dissemination. The meeting between the Buddha and King Bimbisāra, though just a moment in history, laid the foundation for the enduring growth and influence of the Buddhist Sangha. The light of the Dharma, with royal support, began to shine across Magadha, touching countless lives.